Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is the very first episode of our new Zero to Hero series, that is Ansible Zero to Hero series. In this video, we will learn introduction to Ansible and how to get started. To be precise, we will learn what is Ansible, why Ansible, and how Ansible works internally. Along with that, we will also compare Ansible with shell scripting and Python scripting for automation because it is very important to understand the difference when to use shell scripting, when to use Python, and when to use Ansible. We will learn what are the advantages of using Ansible over shell and Python for certain automation tasks. Similarly, when can you use Python over Ansible for certain automation tasks? Then we will learn how to install Ansible on different platforms. We will learn how to use Ansible with Windows, how to use Ansible with Linux, and finally, I will also explain how to use a Visual Studio Code, a IDE. In our case, we'll be using Visual Studio Code. So what are the plugins that you can install in your Visual Studio Code to write better Ansible code? So this is going to be the video content. It's going to be very interesting. Please try to watch it till the end. Now, before we get started, because this is the first episode of the series, let me take a couple of minutes to introduce about the series. So it's going to be of 14 episodes. For the people who have watched Day 0, you might have seen that there were only 11 episodes when we discussed about the course launch. But I have added 3 more episodes. One is policy as code. Second is network automation using Ansible. And I have also added a dedicated video for Ansible interview questions. Let me quickly explain what you are going to learn in this 14 days of Ansible course. What will you learn if you complete this 14 episodes of the Ansible series? We'll start with day 1. Like I've explained, it's going to be introduction and getting started, which is today's episode. In second episode, we will learn about passwordless authentication, which is a prerequisite before you start executing Ansible. You need to have passwordless authentication setup. So I will explain what exactly it is and how to set up passwordless authentication. We will learn about Ansible inventory, which is one of the fundamentals of Ansible and the core concept. Then we will learn about Ansible ad hoc commands. So I'll not directly jump into Ansible playbooks, but we'll first start with Ansible ad hoc commands, which is the right way to do. Because to get started with Ansible, before you write playbooks, if you know what are the building blocks of Ansible, how Ansible talks to the managed nodes, then it will be easy to jump into Ansible playbooks. So that's why we will learn Ansible using ad hoc commands in day 2. Then in day 3, we will write our first Ansible playbook. I'm not talking about each and every line here because we will cover that in the series. Day 4, we will learn about Ansible roles. For Ansible roles, we have 2 videos. The first one is basics of Ansible roles and understanding Ansible roles, where we will learn what exactly are Ansible roles, why to use Ansible roles. Because in the previous episode, we learned about Ansible playbooks. We will try to compare Ansible roles with Ansible playbooks, how roles are different, how Ansible roles can help you write complicated Ansible playbooks and perform complicated tasks using Ansible. We will write a simple Ansible role towards the end of day 4. But in day 5, we will deep dive into Ansible roles. We will learn about Ansible Galaxy, how to use pre-built Ansible roles, just like if you are writing some code, you already have GitHub where the code is already present. You can reuse that piece of code from GitHub. Or if you know any programming language, just like how you have libraries and modules, similarly, you can use pre-built Ansible roles, which I'm going to explain how to use them. And then we will learn how to write a little complicated Ansible role where we will take a industry level project and I'll try to explain how to write that. We will also learn the folder structure of Ansible role. What are the different folders that are present in Ansible roles and what is the significance of each folder. Then in day 6, we will do a dedicated video on Ansible variables and the precedence of Ansible variables. Because in Ansible, there are multiple places where you can use variables. You can use global vars, you can use host variables in your playbook, you can use defaults, you can use the var folders in roles. So what is the order of precedence, which is most commonly asked during the interviews, and people also get confused, where should I place my variables? So we will learn that with a dedicated video session. And day 7, day 8 are going to be how can you improve your playbooks? How can you write better Ansible playbooks using the concepts like conditionals, loops, error handling. So which are building blocks of every programming language. Although Ansible itself is not a programming language, but internally it uses Python. So whatever the YAML file that you write gets translated into Python. I'm going to cover that in the introduction part. So that is how you can use conditionals, loops, and error handling to write better Ansible code. Then day 9, we will learn the security aspect. Everybody is talking about DevSecOps. So we will also learn how to secure your Ansible files that you have written, how to secure by integrating it with Vault so that you can use your variables from Vault, you can use your files from the Vault. So we will learn all that things. Day 10 is going to be policy as code, which is the new concept that I've added to this series. Day 11 is going to be network automation using Ansible. One of the recent popular use case a thing that is getting popular, that is network automation. How do you automate your network appliances? Can be as simple as your VLAN, VXLAN using Ansible. Day 12 is going to be Ansible Tower Deep Dive, where I'll compare the traditional Ansible command line against Ansible Tower. So we will learn what are the advantages that Ansible Tower can get for the enterprises. We will learn that. We will learn the role-based access control. We will learn about the security of Ansible Tower and what else it can add to the enterprises. Day 13, we will do a advanced level Ansible project where I'm going to share how to integrate Terraform with Ansible, which is a common automation integration where people use Terraform for infrastructure provisioning and Ansible for configuration management. So combination, how can you build an enterprise level project? We'll try to cover that in day 13. Day 14, which is the final video of the series, we will learn about the Ansible interview questions. So this is what we are going to do throughout the series. And once you complete this 14 videos on Ansible, I think you will have understanding on most of the popular and important concepts of Ansible, and you can be interview ready for this particular concept. So if you have any questions on the course content, do let me know in the comment section. Probably I might have not covered them in detail during the explanation part, but in the videos, we will cover each and every concept to the core and to the advanced level. So let's start with why Ansible rather than what is Ansible. So if you go back, let's say 10 years. So before 10 years, DevOps engineering was a very budding thing, but every company used to have something called as system administrators or system admins. So what were these system admins doing? So one of the primary activity of system admins was configuration management. Abhishek, what exactly is it? So to explain very simply, every company used to have system administrators, and back then every company used to have their own on-premises setup, or they used to have their own physical servers and virtual machines on their private cloud. So let's say there is a company called example.com. Example.com is a small company, and assume they have only one system administrator. They have their own on-premises setup where assume they have 5 physical servers, which is a very small number, but just for our understanding, let's say they just have 5 physical servers. Out of these 5 physical servers, 4 of their physical servers were Linux, and only one physical server was Windows. And this system administrator used to install hypervisor and used to create virtual machines on these physical servers. But to make it simple, let's assume there are only 4 physical servers and one Windows server. The primary activity of the system administrator was one, to make sure that distribution installed on this Linux virtual machines, if the distribution is CentOS. Okay, one of the primary activity was to make sure the version of CentOS is up to date, or at least these machines had a supported version of CentOS installed. What does that mean? So let's say the system administrator installed CentOS 7 3 years back on all of these physical servers and has not updated the version to the latest or at least the supported, then it becomes a very big mistake, because you are using outdated version of your distribution. There will be lot of unsupported packages. There will be lot of security issues. So the system administrator should always make sure the distribution version is at least the supported version. Other activity the system administrator should take care is the packages and the libraries that are installed on this physical server. For you to understand very simply, let's say there is OpenSSH, or you have wget, you have curl, you have the, let's say, any shared library models, right? So the system administrator along with the CentOS should also make sure that the packages are vulnerable free version, where the packages versions are also up to date. Along with that, the system administrator should also make sure that the application dependencies on this virtual machine. For example, if your developers are using Java, so the system administrator has to make sure that there is latest version of Java installed or the supported version of Java installed. Along with that, there is a web server installed on this virtual machine. There is a application server that is installed on this virtual machine. And again, all of them are secure and all of them have the right version installed. And along with that, the system administrator should also do some maintenance of these servers, make sure they have the right resources such as CPU, memory, and they are available all the time. So these are some activities that system administrators used to perform completely manual, or they used to write some scripts. But again, with the scripts, the system administrators have challenges that if they write shell scripts for automating this task, they will fail or they will not work on the Windows machines. Assume 2 physical servers are Linux but CentOS, and 2 physical servers are Linux but Debian or Ubuntu. Again, their shell script might fail because in the shell script, if for automating these activities, let's say for automating the Java version upgrade, instead of logging in to each of this physical server and updating the Java version, the intelligent system administrator thought, okay, why should I log into every machine and run the Java version upgrade command? I'll simply run a shell script which will automate on all the servers. Where in the shell script, the system administrator wrote yum command. The M command will work on CentOS but will fail on Debian or will fail on any other distribution of Linux. So these were some challenges, and this was making the life of system administrator hell. Then came the configuration management tools like Puppet, Chef, Salt, and our hero for today, that is Ansible. Now let's spend some time to revise and understand what exactly we learned till now. So we learned that every organization used to have people called as system admins, where system admins used to perform something called as configuration management. And this configuration management was mostly manual activity, or it was creating a lot of issue for the system administrator because the type of servers, it can be physical or virtual machine, they can be of different types, where one can be Linux with CentOS, one can be Linux with Debian, one can be Linux with Alpine, and one can be Windows. So they used to have lot of tasks such as making sure the distribution version is up to date, system level dependencies are up to date, application dependencies such as programming language or the Java runtime or the servers such as web servers and application servers, all of them are up to date, and all this manual activity was making the life of system administrators hell. Now this is when, right? Because if a system administrator has to update very simple task, so the system administrator got the task to update the version of Java. This sysadmin should log into Linux machine with Debian and run a command, Linux machine with yum and run a different command, Alpine and a different command, Windows and a different command. So it was very tedious activity. So to solve this problem, tools like Puppet, tools like Chef, Salt, and Ansible were introduced. I think Puppet was the first one to come, but subjected to memory correction. Uh, Out of these tools, maybe Puppet or Chef was the first one to be introduced, and they were solving this problem. So what Puppet and Chef said, which were very popular back then, if you go back maybe 6 to 7 years, Puppet and Chef was very popular, and they were solving the problem where they said, system administrators, okay, don't worry, we will solve your problem. What you can do, assume this as Puppet or Chef. Okay, so they used to say, system administrators, right? Hey, sysadmin, we would like to act as an interface between you and your organizational configuration. Let's say the physical servers that you have, multiple physical servers and virtual machine. We will act as an interface. What you need to do is you need to learn Puppet or Chef. They were written as cookbooks, they were written in Ruby. Again, Puppet, Chef, and Salt, they used to have a different style of writing. So I'll not go into the details of them, but they used to act as an interface where system administrators can learn Puppet or Chef, and they just need to write the Puppet or Chef style of programming, and they will convert. It can be Linux with CentOS, Linux with Debian, Linux with Alpine. They just need to write one programming, that is Puppet or Chef, and they will automate all the things. So the advantage that system administrators got was, okay, so instead of I writing a shell script for Linux with CentOS and a PowerShell script for Windows, I'll just write a Puppet script and it will take care of automating all the target servers. So this was going good. Puppet and Chef was solving the problem, but one big challenge, right? One big challenge with Puppet and Chef was the learning curve, because you need to learn Ruby, you need to learn the complex style of Puppet and Chef, which was becoming difficult for the system administrators because it is again a new skill that they have to learn. And additionally, they were not agentless in the architecture. That is, what system administrators should do is they need to go to each of their physical machine, or they need to go to each of their virtual machine, and they need to install agent. That is, let's assume a simple software. So they need to install software on all of their target machines, and they need to join the new machine that they have created with the, let's say this is master and this is the target servers. So this is a machine where Puppet and Chef are installed, and these are the machines which they have to automate. So they need to go to each of these machines and they need to install a software called as agent. So again, this is an additional burden, but the major challenge, not only agentless, but also learning curve, because Puppet used to have a complex style of writing the Puppet scripts, and Chef, which is basically chef books, again cookbooks, again they used to have complex, they can be written in Ruby, a learning curve for the system administrators. So this is where Ansible came into picture. So what Ansible said is, okay, system administrators, all that you need to do is you just need to know YAML. And YAML is basically not a programming, it's a standard where a lot of people already know JSON and YAML, because it's a standard templating language that is used in the industry. So Ansible said you can write the playbooks in the Ansible world. We call them as playbooks, whatever you are writing in Ansible. So you can write the playbooks in YAML. And another advantage Ansible said is we are also agentless. That means you don't need to install any software on the target machines. So in the world of Ansible, we call control node and manage nodes. Okay. So what exactly are control nodes and what exactly are manage nodes? So the machine on which you install the Ansible software is called as control node. The machine that you use, it can be again a physical machine or virtual machine, but these days we are using virtual machines, right? So in your organization, if you have, let's say, 100 virtual machines, okay, what you can do is you can choose one of your virtual machine as a control node and install Ansible on that particular virtual machine. And using this virtual machine, you can manage the configuration of all the other virtual machines. That's why this is called as control node, and all the machines using which you are managing the configuration are called as manage nodes. So now, what is a basic example? What can you do with Ansible? Very simple thing. You can install Ansible on one of your virtual machine, call it as control node. And if you are given a task that Abhishek, install Java on all the virtual machines in our organization. So you will simply go, you will write a Ansible YAML file. You will put that YAML file on the Ansible control node. You will run a Ansible command, and using that Ansible command, it can talk to all the virtual machines in your organization, and within matter of seconds or some minutes, you have your Java, JDK, Java runtime, whatever package that you want installed up and running on all your managed nodes. And the interesting fact is the managed nodes can be Windows, managed nodes can be Linux of any distribution. It doesn't matter. Advantage of using Ansible over Puppet and Chef. This comes with a agentless architecture. That means on all of your managed nodes, you don't have to install any software. Tomorrow, if there are 10 new servers that are added to your organization, so you don't have to go to 10 servers and install any Ansible software on it. Ansible can directly talk to it. Prerequisite is they just need to have Python. If they have Python, Ansible can talk to them, and Ansible can deploy any software, manage any configuration, upgrades on the target servers, right? So this is how Ansible works, and this is how Ansible became popular. But can Ansible only do configuration management? The answer is no. Now let's talk about what exactly is Ansible. Although Ansible started its journey as a configuration management tool, now it's a very powerful automation platform where configuration management is one of the tasks of Ansible these days, right? Ansible started as a configuration management tool, but now it's a powerful automation platform where configuration management is one of its tasks. Apart from that, Ansible can also do provisioning. What exactly provisioning means? Just like how Terraform can create resources on your cloud platforms, similarly, using Ansible also, you can provision resources. For example, an EC2 instance creation or a S3 bucket. Or if you're using Azure, you can create a virtual machine. So Ansible can also work for provisioning. Its core skill where Ansible can work for configuration management. Ansible is also widely used for deployment. In CI/CD, there are a lot of people who use Ansible for deploying the artifact onto the target servers. Why? Because if you understood the concept of Ansible, what Ansible can do using one control node, it can deploy anything onto multiple managed nodes, right? So people have figured this out that it can also help with their deployment. If they want to deploy an application to multiple Kubernetes clusters or to multiple virtual machines, they can also use Ansible for that. So that's why a lot of people also use Ansible in their CI/CD for the deployment phase. And another important thing, which is quite popular these days, where Ansible can also be used for network automation. So, although it started its journey as a configuration management tool, but now it is spread across multiple things. So, if someone asks you what is Ansible, it's better to say that Ansible is an automation platform where Ansible can help you with provisioning, configuration management, deployment, and network automation. In terms of provisioning, it can be used for creating infrastructure, creating platforms, for example, creating EC2 instances, S3 buckets, virtual machines. In terms of configuration management, it can help life of developers, sorry, DevOps engineers or system administrators by managing configuration of hundreds of virtual machines. It can be used for deployment in the CI/CD phase, and it can be also used for network automation. If you haven't understood anything about network automation at this point of time, you can leave it because it's a slightly complicated topic. We will touch that when we move to the network automation. But if I have to explain that in one single line, you know, companies like Cisco, companies like F5, where they have a load balancer, they have security related tools, API gateways, right? Or Zscaler. So they have the network appliances, can be physical or virtual. These things became again very popular these days because of their advanced load balancing capabilities or security, API gateway, web application firewall. So using Ansible, just like how you automate the configuration of virtual machines, you can also talk to these particular network appliances. These are the companies, but they have network appliances, and you can automate their network appliances. Very simple thing like automation of a VLAN. So this is how you need to explain what is Ansible. Rather than explaining, you need to understand that Ansible is not just about configuration management. So what did we learn till now? We learned what is Ansible. We learned why Ansible. And in the why aspect, I want to cover something more which is very, very important. That is Ansible versus shell scripting versus Python. As a DevOps engineer, one of the common challenge that you face is you have multiple options and you need to figure out what option works the best for you. For example, you can use shell scripting to install Java, right? And you can automate this using shell scripting. You can also use Python, right? Where again using Python, you can automate installation of Java on a virtual machine, and you can also do it using Ansible. Now the question is, if you are given a task in your organization, which approach would you take, right? So assume there is a DevOps engineer called Abhishek, and Abhishek in the organization is managing, let's say, 5 virtual machines. And the task that is assigned to Abhishek through a Jira ticket is to install Java. Let's say any of these virtual machines did not have Java. So the task that is assigned to Abhishek is to install Java on all the 5 virtual machines. Now I can simply log into each of these virtual machine manually. I can install Java, or I can write a simple shell script, yum install Java, or Java is a simple thing. That's why you might find it easy. What about installing Oracle, which is a database? You have multiple steps. You have to install, you have to configure. So now assume there are 10 steps. Now I can write a shell script, automate these 10 steps. Just log into this virtual machine, run the shell script dot Oracle install dot sh, right? And I will log into these 5 virtual machines and run it 5 times. Now the problem with shell script is, just like I have explained, if one of the virtual machine is Windows, your automation will not work. That is, the shell script that Abhishek has written will not work because I have different types of virtual machines, Windows, and again on different virtual machines also, I might have different package manager. So shell script is not an option for this task. Now you might say, but Abhishek, Python is a suitable option, right? Obviously. Python is a very good option because for all of these virtual machines, it can be Windows or Linux, Python will work, because Python is platform independent, right? It works on Windows, it works on Linux. So if you write a Python script and you can execute, logging into this virtual machine, execute it on uh, VM1, VM2, VM3, VM4, VM5, and it works bang on. So your task is automated. But the problem is that, one is you need to know Python, obviously. So you need to be good with Python programming. Second, maintenance. Timely, you have to update the Python script that you have written. After 1 year, your Python script might not work. You have to constantly make sure it is working. Third, how about logging into each of these virtual machines, right? Again, that is a task. If you have 100 virtual machines, you have to log in to 100 virtual machines and execute the Python program. But you can say, Abhishek, there are modules like Paramiko, you have Fabric. Now, again, these add the complexity. That is, this again adds a learning curve where the DevOps engineers or the system administrators, they need to know these modules like Paramiko, they need to know Fabric, they need to write the Python scripts and maintain them for each and every installation. So this is where Ansible helps you, where Ansible, one is you don't have to log into the virtual machine, just install Ansible on a control node. Just tell the control node that these are my 100 virtual machines. Okay, in a configuration file called as inventory. So control node reads the inventory, understands that, okay, these are my 100 virtual machines, and it can execute parallelly or sequentially. So you don't have to interrupt it. Parallelly, it can run the task of installing Arkill, 10 tasks, 15 tasks. It will do parallelly or sequentially and complete the task for you. There is no manual intervention that is needed, and you don't have a strong learning curve as well. Why? Because all that you need to know in Ansible is just YAML, right? Even if you're not good with YAML, you have great Ansible documentation. Once you start writing Ansible by looking at the documentation, you will learn Ansible plus YAML in no time. And this does not require a strong programming knowledge, right? That's why you need to use Ansible over shell scripting and Python for configuration management. Now you might ask, but Abhishek, when can I use Python over Ansible? Again, the answer is very simple. You can use Python over Ansible when your tasks are like to talk to the APIs, and let's say you want to create a Jira ticket, right? Or you want to create a, let's say, GitHub issue through the API. Then better go with Python, because here talking to the APIs, talking to tools like Jira and GitHub, which do not have rich Ansible modules. If you want to create resources on AWS, if you want to create resources on Azure, or if you want to create resources on any platforms that are strongly supported by Ansible, go with Ansible. Otherwise, if there are things like Jira, GitHub, Ansible might support it, but the maintenance and the support is not quite strong. So you should go with tools like Python, and you can also use shell scripting if required. Your next question can be, Abhishek, okay, but when you look at Ansible, you said Ansible can also be used for provisioning. In terms of provisioning, you have Terraform, which is quite popular. So should I go with Terraform or should I go with Ansible? My obvious answer will be go with Terraform. Why? Just like how the core skill of Ansible is configuration management, similarly, the core skill of Terraform is infrastructure as code and infrastructure provisioning. So Terraform, the primary skill or the primary thing of Terraform is infrastructure as code and provisioning infrastructure. So when you have a dedicated tool that is solving a particular purpose, it is always good to go with that particular tool rather than an automation platform that targets on multiple things. Tomorrow, if there is a new public cloud provider or AWS has launched 10 services, you will see Terraform adding support quickly, Terraform adding uh, help for creating resources on these 10 services quick, then Ansible, and the support will also be better for Terraform. So Terraform should be used for infrastructure provisioning, whereas Ansible, it supports only if your organization decides to use Ansible for everything, then only you should be using Ansible. Otherwise, a dedicated tool like Terraform is always preferred. Some companies, they might purchase licensing from Red Hat, where Red Hat has an enterprise and Ansible version, which is Ansible automation platform provided by Red Hat. And in such kind of cases, your organization might lean towards Ansible because they have anyways taken a subscription from Red Hat, and they also get support from Red Hat if your organization is stuck somewhere. So in such cases, they will prefer using Ansible for provisioning, configuration management, deployment, and all the other tasks because they know Red Hat is going to support them. So this is about what is Ansible, why Ansible, and how Ansible works internally. The requirement is that on your control node, you need to have Python installed, and also on your manage nodes, you need to have Python installed. Why Python is required? Because whatever the YAML file that you are writing is taken by Ansible. Okay, Ansible takes your YAML file that you have written and it converts the YAML file that you have written into Python, and it executes the Python modules on the manage nodes. Right? It connects to the manage nodes using SSH protocol if it is Linux, using WinRM protocol if it is Windows, and it connects to the control nodes. So the requirement is that you need to have Python installed both on the control node and the manage nodes. Now let's quickly look how to install Ansible. It's not difficult. You can just go to this Ansible documentation, just search for installing Ansible. The simplest way to install Ansible is by using Python pip, because the control node and the manage nodes need to have Python. So installing pip might already be there. So using pip, you can simply do pip install Ansible. But what about control node and manage node? Can I use anything as a control node for Ansible? Abhishek, I'm using Windows. Can I use, my personal laptop is a Windows machine. So can I use Ansible on my Windows machine? So there are some prerequisites. If you go to control node requirements, it clearly mentions that you can nearly use any Unix like machine with Python installed. This includes, so if your personal laptop is using Red Hat, Debian, Ubuntu, Mac OS, any kind of BSDs, it works fine. You can use that as Ansible control node. Personally, I'm using a Mac machine, so I can use my machine as an Ansible control node. But if you are using Windows, so there is a prerequisite that it is better to have WSL distribution installed on your laptop. Because this is the recommendation, it might work without the WSL as well, but it becomes difficult, some of the modules, packages. So, better if you have Windows machine, install WSL, or you can use any Linux machine from the cloud platform as your control node. That is, spin up an EC2 instance, It can be T2 micro, a free tier instance as well, no problem. And use that as your Ansible control node. That is totally fine, right? So quickly, what are the instructions to install Ansible? Just search for this, installing and upgrading Ansible. All that you need to do is just run pip install Ansible, right? Pip3 minus m, that is whatever the module that you're calling, which is sorry, Python 3, the module is pip install Ansible. If you run this simple command, you have Ansible installed. So like I said, I am using a Mac machine. It doesn't matter. Just go to EC2 instance, create an Ubuntu virtual machine, and you can just run this command pip install Ansible. Okay, you can see it is installing Ansible. So you just need to have pip on your machine, on your virtual machine that you are creating. You don't have to run pip3 minus m pip. You can just run pip3 install Ansible as well. If it does not work, you can go back and use this command. Make sure if you are not sure if you are using pip3 or pip2, so better run this command so that you can ensure the pip version that you are using belongs to Python 3. What happens is sometimes if you have an existing virtual machine, if your virtual machine is new, you don't have to worry about it. But if you have an old virtual machine, probably a year ago, that virtual machines might have Python 3 and Python 2. So you might get confused which version of pip you are using. If you are creating a new virtual machine, then that's not a problem. It takes little time because it has to install all the dependencies. Once this is done, you can simply run Ansible version and you can see that your Ansible is installed. Now, let's cover the final point that, okay, Abhishek, I have Ansible up and running. We will see that once it is done. Now, for my local development, if I'm learning Ansible, and if I want to use an IDE, which is a good practice, because when you are learning any programming or any particular thing, it is good that you have a IDE that you are using so that you can write code better and very quick. So what you need to have is you need to have few extensions enabled on your Visual Studio Code or any IDE. First is a YAML extension. Why? Because Ansible code is written in YAML by the DevOps engineers. Of course, Ansible internally converts that to Python, but we write them in YAML files. So on your Visual Studio Code, install this extension called YAML, which is the first extension that I'm suggesting. And once you have this YAML, this is provided by Red Hat. Make sure you install that. And the second extension that you need to install is Ansible. Just search for Ansible, again provided by Red Hat. Because why everything I'm suggesting with respect to Red Hat? Because Ansible automation platform is there is open source version, but Red Hat also has an enterprise version. They are leading contributors to Ansible and they own Ansible. So that's why most of the plugins are provided by Red Hat. So you also need to install this particular extension called Ansible provided by Red Hat. These are the two extensions that you need to have, nothing more than that. Once we start writing Ansible playbooks from day 3, you will see how to use these extensions. You will see how to use the Visual Studio Code or any IDE. Perfect. Now let's see Ansible version. So it's running the command and it clearly explained, okay, Abhishek, this is the version of Ansible that is installed on your machine. So verify by running this command that Ansible is installed on your machine so that we are ready for day 2. In day 2, we will cover Ansible ad hoc commands. For now, this is what we have learned in today's video. And for tomorrow's video, just make sure you have Ansible installed and ready. If you have a Windows machine, try to install WSL. It will make your life very, very simple because you can do the development of Ansible on your local machine itself. You can use IDEs. If not, you create a cloud instance or a virtual machine, but it becomes little difficult. You have to write code in your local, take that to your virtual machine, because on virtual machine, you cannot use Visual Studio Code or any other IDEs. You have to use the Vim editor. Becomes a little difficult, right? Thank you so much for watching the video for today. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.